Hello, eGP learners, and welcome to this episode of the eGP Learning Podcast, where you've got myself and Andy, and we're doing our year in review. How are you feeling there, Andy?
Yeah, feeling fairly festive. So I think when this is going out, it's 1 week before Christmas, I think. So I'm feeling festive, got my Christmas shopping done, hopefully by the time this goes out, not done now. So hopefully we'll all be set for Christmas.
Absolutely. And for this episode, we thought we'd take a look back at 2020 in terms of what's been happening, what we think in terms of, kind of our awards that we wanted to give. So we did this last year and the year before. I don't know if people remember, and we've got some predictions to review. So do feel free to check out our episode from last year to see whether or not we got it right or not. But to be honest, we're going to give you spoilers on that anyway. And then, like we said, we've got some awards to hand out, haven't we, Andy?
We have. So it's a fairly light-hearted episode today. Not going to keep you here too long, but see what we thought were the sort of biggest movers and shakers and winners of our awards in 2020.
Absolutely. So we're going to go to our predictions from last year. So as we mentioned, feel free to check out our episode from last year, and I'll stick that down below in the show notes so you can have a little look and things. But effectively, we made some rather bold predictions this time last year as to what would happen in 2020. How did they go, Andy?
I think my prediction, we'll go with that first. So I predicted that the PCN bubble would burst. I was a little bit, I think at the time I was feeling that PCNs were being held up as the answer to everything. At that point in time, it seemed you'd go to meetings and people are like, oh, well, the PCNs will handle that. The PCNs are the answer to that problem. And I think certainly myself and a lot of other people were thinking, well, hang on, the PCNs are very immature organizations at the moment. In many cases, there's just a clinical director and no other real staff apart from some fledgling ARS staff. And it felt like expectations were high and delivery was low at that point. So PCN bubble going to burst. I thought people would be feeling much more negative about PCNs by the end of the year. So go on, you score me, Gandhi. What do you think? Did I get that right?
I think it's a 6 or 7. I don't think the bubble's
really
burst.
That high?
But yeah. Well, I don't think the bubble's burst, but I think people are thinking about it differently, both positively and negatively. I think it's a mixed bag, isn't it, from my perspective at the least? I don't know. What do you think, Andy?
Yeah, I think primary care networks are maturing, having a difficult and challenging first year. Obviously, there is the elephant in the room, which is COVID-19, which has been really, really challenging for practice working together as groups. But in some ways, that's driven practices together and perhaps help strengthen relationships in PCNs in a strange way in some places. So I was going to give myself a fairly low reading. I some ways thought I was right initially when we were talking about the primary care network DES specifications in the early part of the year that didn't look favorable. But fortunately, those changed. And I think I'm pleased that I have been proved wrong on this count. And I don't think the PCN bubble has burst. I think PCNs continue to have challenges, but to some extent are just about growing to meet them.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the reason why I probably put it so high is just because I think there have been challenges with the PCN working and stuff. And like you say, I think there's still some people that view that PCNs can do things that they just can't quite do yet because we're still maturing. And like you said, COVID came in and just massively stumped a few things. But like you said, also was quite positive. I know in our network, it brought us together. We worked more collaboratively doing various things. We set up a clinical management center to manage COVID patients. We did loads of really cool stuff that we were brought together because we had those discussions already about working closer. And I'm hoping that we will see continued benefit from things like the ARS roles as well. I know COVID kind of stunted that again for us for this year, and I think we just stuck a little bit. But the precipice is kind of getting towards, and we're going to see some more positivity and things. So fingers crossed it will continue to improve rather than burst the bubble.
Yeah, fingers crossed. So, Gandhi, what was your prediction for last year?
So, as you know, Andy, one of my nicknames is I call myself the Time Lord Starry, Dr. Gandalf and all that kind of thing. And I kind of think I got this one, but not by intention.
You'd been in the TARDIS and nipped forward a year and looked back and got it absolutely right, I think, by the look of things. So what did you predict?
I predicted that we'd move towards using video consultations and remote consulting a lot more. And, well, we kind of did, didn't we?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think we've all been using it as part of our daily, weekly practice.
Yeah.
I think it's been interesting. I've probably now that it's available, might use it less than I thought I could have done, but I use it a hell of a lot more than I used to.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, good prediction, Gandhi. Yeah, how do you feel about being right on that?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could take all the credit for it. I clearly can't because it took a world event to make it happen in the speed that it happened. But you know what? Yeah, it's kind. This is where I think general practice needed to move towards in the next 2 to 3 years. It's just bizarre that it happened in about 2 to 3 weeks, actually, didn't it? So, and we are where we are, and we'll see how that. I think the interesting thing to see was how it's going to change as life hopefully gets back towards normalcy or whatever that normality will be after COVID and all that kind of stuff. So we should see what that looks like from there. But I think we'll come to that when we come to our predictions for 2021, won't we?
Yeah. So yeah, okay. Well, congratulations, Gandhi. I think you definitely won there. We'll see how we get on for next year with our predictions. So good. Shall we have a look at our awards then? So last year, I think we're following a similar format.
Yeah.
We had an awards ceremony last year. This year, what we're going to be looking at is our each of our. So we've each sort of separately come up with our top 5 primary care tech trends or tech events or things
Yeah.
that we think have been significant over the last year, and we've got a few honourable mentions each as well, and we're going to sort of reveal them as we go and give credit where credit's due, I think, for good work.
hmm So number 5, then, Andy. So we're going to start at the bottom, work our way up towards the top, and then we're going to get to our honourable mentions afterwards. So number 5, Andy, what did you have?
So number 5, yeah, I've almost forgotten. Let's see who's at number 5. Hang on, I need to click on the other screen. So number 5, Nikki Kanani. So Nikki was on the show this year, wasn't she? At some point, which I think just shows how Nikki, as NHS England Director of Primary Care, gets herself out there and communicates with her colleagues in general practice and does that really, really well. And I think actually she's done a really good job over the last year. I think she's universally pretty much, has a lot of respect for how she's
hmm
handled things. There have been some elements of controversy throughout the year, but she's also handled those very well as well. So I think she's a great communicator. She's using new ways in difficult times to communicate with people. She does frequent webinars and webcasts. Because she's done so well and because she's used digital technology, she's my number 5, Gandhi. What do you think to that?
I think I'm going to agree. We'll see, shall we?
See if
So
she pops up on your list as well.
yeah, let's see if she pops up on my list. But I do not disagree with anything you've just said.
Yeah, excellent. So, Nikki, if you're watching, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
So Gandhi, what have you got here? Have we got a drum roll? Do we have
We
a?
don't unfortunately have a drum roll. No, it's
Oh no,
we need to get that
that's
sound effect sorted, but we
okay.
will have
Gandhi
that.
has some sound effects.
Yeah.
Okay, so Gandhi, what's this? What's your number 5?
So my number 5 is video conferencing. So, we saw with the advent of COVID that basically everyone jumped onto using video conferencing. The 2 in particular that I know pretty much everyone across the NHS has been looking at using has been things like Zoom and MS Teams, and in particular MS Teams has been, something that's really changing the way we do things. I'm gonna chuck another one in there, Andy, and that's Hopin, and I know that's probably more specific for me and you, because we've been doing some video conferences, and the tool we've used for that is a platform called Hopin, which works very similar to Zoom, but allows us to do a few extra things that Zoom and Teams don't allow you to do. But that whole concept of video meeting, I mean, our lives have changed. Um, you and I kind of led the charge on this about a year or two,
Yeah, we were ahead of the curve when we were
exactly.
talking about video meetings and Zoom towards the end of 2019.
Mhm.
And that would have been a great prediction for the year, wouldn't
Yeah,
it? Widespread adoption of those
absolutely.
technologies.
It's one of those things where you wish you'd invested in it and kind of reap the benefits of that. I mean, Zoom's one of the biggest companies in the world now, isn't it? Because of everyone
Yeah,
jumped on.
perhaps overvalued. I'm not a stock picker
Maybe,
or
yeah.
stock advisor, but yeah, you could have like 10x or multiple x your money by investing in Zoom. But then,
Mhm.
who saw the pandemic coming? Not me.
Exactly. But, I think the way we work has massively changed because of video conferences and allowed us to do a lot more stuff. It's allowed the world to a degree to try and continue. And particularly in clinical work, we do a lot more things. We have regular webinars through Teams. We have regular meetings through Zoom and Teams and all that kind of stuff. It's just, yeah. I mean, we're big fans of conferencing, but also recognizing the challenges. We've done that as well, haven't we, Andy?
Definitely. So maybe it's in the show notes, but we did a video about the darker side of video conferencing, because it's had potentially some negative effects, I think, on our working lives. I'm going to talk more about that in one of the later segments later on in the episode.
Oh, spoilers.
Maybe a spoiler alert there, but yeah, we'll talk more about that later. Yeah, I think Gandhi, I was listening to another podcast. I can't remember which one it was, but they were talking about the impact of video meetings and the impact they will have on the workplace. And they were actually putting the level of impact on a similar level to email. And they were saying, actually, this is a new way that people conduct themselves or communicate within their business, within their organizations. And it may actually bring in a change in the way we work on a similar level to when email was introduced, or when the telephone was introduced, or when the postal service was introduced, because you can have a rich, real-time conversation with multiple people at the drop of a hat, and without needing to travel or move anywhere or get on a jet to go to New York and things like that. And they were saying, actually, it may be more revolutionary than we think in terms of how we work, where we work from, and what we're doing. And I think that applies for general practice as well. So maybe I'm making a case for it being even higher up the list, but definitely needs to be on the list.
Definitely. Let's go to number 4, shall we then, Andy?
So my number 4 is so I got the oldest looking kind of picture of a telephone I could find on the internet. Telephone is still a technology. I'm often at pains to sort of say things that we think of as not necessarily new, cutting edge technology is still tech. And I think we still need to be aware that we can squeeze more value out of these older things as well. Maybe not the fax machine, but that's gone in the bin this year. Maybe we should have had a little section for the death of the fax machine in the NHS. But no, the telephone. I've been using the telephone more than I've been using any other new technology. I think I've been spending more additional time on the telephone than anything else, more than video consultations, more than video conferences and video meetings, because of the move to total triage in general practice. And I just sort of think, where would we have been without being able to do telephone consultations in terms of continuing to provide care and risk assessing people before they came to general practice? So I've put the telephone on the list. Should it be there, Gandhi?
I think I'm going to ask the question, would you stick SMS in there as well? Because SMS kind of came back this year, didn't it? Text messaging.
Yeah, I would actually. That's a very good case, actually. Let's lump that in with the telephone. I don't think that phone on the picture does SMS. I'm not sure.
It looks a little bit old.
I don't think it does, but that's really good. And actually sending people hyperlinks via SMS that they can click on and access websites, advice, leaflets, videos has been something that I think people are doing a load more of this year. And actually it's been integrated into some of the platforms which have emerged as significant over the course of the year. Spoiler alert.
Ooh, dun, dun, dun.
Did you want to do your number 4, Gandhi?
Yeah, so my number 4 is Nikki Kanani. So yeah, I guess the kind of reason I wasn't as talkative as when you were talking about it is because she's number 4 on my list. And I guess the reason why I put it slightly higher, I think from my perspective, is just it's the level of communication we've seen from Nikki, and in terms of the work that she's been doing. I'd stick WhatsApp in there as well to a degree, and a lot of that has been through. I mean, people ask me, Gandhi, how do you do all the stuff that you do? I have no idea how Nikki manages it. She is engaged with so many different groups, whether it's by email, whether it's by WhatsApp, whether it's by webinars. And when we've seen a massive raft of them over the past few weeks, and particularly with the COVID vaccination stuff, how much time she spends on this, I think, is completely undervalued. And I know that at times people are occasionally negative about this stuff because she's the representative kind of person for NHSE, and general practice relationship with NHSE is an interesting thing, and they are at the end of the days kind of like our employer, but not quite, because obviously general practice is an independent business and stuff.
It's worse than that, Gandhi, because your employer has some duty of care to you. When you employ people, they're just our overlord, something negative. But no, it's they're not like our employer. They're like our sort of the people who contract us, which is different. Sorry to interrupt. Carry on.
No, no, not at all. And I guess one of the things I would definitely say is having been in a situation where you're being asked to do one thing and your role may mean that you have to do something slightly different. We've been clinical directors. Sometimes we have to discuss things that makes, our practices a little bit uncomfortable and, trying to show potentially both sides of the arguments, the reasons why things may not always work the way that we want them to work. I can't imagine how Nikki has to do that. And I always come back to some people about, well, who else could do that role, you know? Because I think many people feel that they could do what Nikki does, from a different perspective, better representing general practice. Not to say I don't think she does. I think she does it really, really well. Um, but I think sometimes people comment that, oh, that's not what a grassroots GP would want. But then I'll be honest, grassroots GP probably wouldn't, that kind of concept may not be doing that role anyway. Because I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say here. But I
I
think
think. I think.
admiration for what she has done, an immense amount of work I can guarantee has probably gone into her past year, more than any of us will ever appreciate, and I don't know how she manages to continue doing it, as well as maintaining some semblance of a life and things, so
It's been
hats
a
off.
crazy year. It's been a crazy year. She's done a good job, and I don't think I've ever known who the director of primary care at NHS England is before Nikki Kanani did the job. So.
Dr. Arvin Madden.
Okay. I, I think she's more high profile. I think is
Mhm.
what I'm saying, and more visible. Although I'm sure he did a very good job in his own way. I don't want to be disparaging at all.
Okay. Mhm.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Alright, let's move on to number 3 then, shall we?
Okay, so right, I've gone 3 and 2 because I thought we could just do individual companies or
Okay.
products or apps for each one. So I've done 3, 2, but I think Gandhi's cheated a little bit in some of how he's done his top 5. So number 3, Microsoft Teams. Number 2, Zoom. Yeah, so I mean, we've already spoken a little bit today about how video meetings have changed our lives. But actually, in terms of what's made the most difference to how my job feels, it has been video meetings. That's both good and bad. I'll come to that
Mhm.
later. Um, but wow, has it had an impact over the course of the last year
Yep.
and enabled us to respond to this crisis, the particular nature of this crisis, where traveling to and being in the room with other people has been something that we have not been allowed or supposed to do and have been supposed to minimize. Thank goodness that these products came along at just the right time and enabled us to actually be effective and
Mhm.
meet and communicate and collaborate and plan the response from primary care to COVID-19 and other, and we've used it for other purposes now. But thank goodness for them. I think they've been really significant, and I think they're significant technologies going forwards. That's why they're on my list.
Cool. So question, actually, I'm gonna ask you this once we've done my 3 to give you a chance to come back in. So we'll come back to my question, but definitely agree with what you said. Obviously, they were slightly lower on my list just because I felt these other things were more significant. And I guess for me and you, we've been doing Zoom and Teams and similar things for
Yeah.
a lot longer than I think most other people, but fair enough. That's my own perspective. But my number 3 was, and it's more a concept, is the right shift of digital use. So what do I mean by this? Many of our EGP learners have probably heard me mention this phrase on numerous occasions whenever I talk and that kind of thing. But effectively, because of COVID, the entire population has done this right shift. If you look at a bell curve towards using tech in their lives, in whatever they do, and that kind of stuff. So people that wouldn't normally have used online ordering are now using online ordering. People that wouldn't have used online banking are now using online banking because we've had to, and that applies to healthcare. Many of our population have recognized the fact that we have to use digital tools because a lot of them were the way that we could safely deliver healthcare to our population. And that right shift has also meant that it's then easier to keep trying to do that for majority of the population. Not all. Absolutely. We need to focus on things like digital poverty, digital exclusion, all that kind of stuff that needs to be continue to be considered and not forgotten. But I think, it's made a massive impact to us. It means that people are a lot more open to stuff, like sending sick notes through a text message system. People are actually open to that now. Or sending photos to the GP. So much more of our population are happy to do that because they're more happy using the tech to do it. Does that help?
Yeah, I agree entirely. Yeah, my parents have been using Zoom. I've had images sent in of rashes from people in their 80s. You know, all sorts. It's really unexpected things that that I think have only really been enabled by the strange year that we've had. So there we go. Gandhi, really quickly, right shift. What do you
Mhm.
mean by right shift?
So right shift, so bell curve, that constant kind of graph, the whole I've forgotten the
The,
term.
the, the, the normal distribution you're talking
That's
about.
the one, normal
Yeah.
distribution. So most people kind of sit towards the middle in terms of what they do, and you've got your fringes, you've got the people at the left side, which are less in terms of what you're trying to show, and people on the right side, which are more. So if you can use bell curves to describe most things, and particularly over a population. Generally speaking, most distributions are a bell curve. Right shift. So basically, a good chunk of the population have just shifted towards the right, and so being more happy to use tech. Not all. I'm going to emphasize that not everybody has clearly, but we've seen a general population shift. And I've got no evidence to back that up. To be honest, this is all just my view. But I think it has happened, and we see that. Like I said, people are happier using tech to do a lot more stuff nowadays.
Yeah. Oh, it's real. I agree. So
Mhm.
Gandhi, I did two and three together. So it's your number two next, and
Well,
your
I had a
number two.
question for you, so I was going to bring you
Oh,
back to
go
this.
on. Yeah, sorry.
Why have you put Zoom ahead of Teams?
So there was a very good question, and
Mhm.
actually maybe being challenged, I could turn them around. I think so. Zoom came first, didn't it? So actually, there was a point where actually we were all meeting on Zoom.
Mhm.
And I'm going to do a little bit of kind of post event rationalization here. And I'm going to say that maybe I've put that first because some of the key kind of organizational meetings when, in Nottingham, we were being briefed about significant developments and being brought together to do things like put together our primary care network based COVID management
Mhm.
centers and things like that. That activity took place on Zoom because there just wasn't the adoption there and the knowledge about Teams, and it took a while for that to come into place. But you're right. I think there's been two waves. So Zoom was really significant from an organization to organization, clinician to clinician,
Mhm.
not using or sharing patient data perspective. And that sort of phase was earlier. And then later, sort of coming from the summer through autumn, winter, I think we've been using a lot more of Microsoft Teams because of its adoption and funding within the NHS.
Mhm.
And actually the experience on Teams has really improved in the latter part of the year. It wasn't on par with Zoom to begin with. And you can share patient information on Teams, which is the big kind of killer app really, or killer feature for the NHS. So maybe next year Teams will be ahead of Zoom, but I'm going to say Zoom in terms of its utility early pandemic pips the post for me. But I'm probably post event rationalizing, and maybe it should have been the other way around. Good challenge.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think the usability of Zoom is a bit more superior to Teams in terms of how you can use it, and it is just easier to use. Recognizing security concerns, so Zoom does have security concerns, which is why it absolutely should never be used for patient data. And I know that even more than that, sometimes there's concerns about how it works security-wise. So shout out to Damien, who constantly reminds me that Zoom is not safe. And I know me and him have repeated debates about that. And he's not wrong. I'll be absolutely clear in that respect. But I think organizationally, we found it really useful for us. We've done loads of work with it, and educationally, I think it works amazingly. But you're absolutely right. For the NHS, the future, I think, is Teams. We're going to see that. So we're going to go to my number two. Um, and it's a weird little image, but it basically means YouTube and podcasts. And I think the reason for that is we've all shifted to using more content creation and content consumption kind of methods. I mean, VOD streaming like Netflix and Disney Live, Disney Plus, sorry, are kind of dominating obviously things. But I think particularly for primary care, you know, it's now so much easier to find content that can help you, and particularly for people to learn through content, I think has been really useful. And for me over the past year, I mean, I've really enjoyed creating all this stuff. We've done so much more stuff over the past year than we did in any of the 2 years prior to all of this. So I think there's that element of stuff. But, you know, A, I've enjoyed it a lot. And B, I find it more useful personally as well in terms of capturing all the information and content. It's become so much easier as well. So, yeah. That's what it
Yeah,
sounds
and I think we've
like.
seen I was going to say, I think we've seen a explosions, maybe too strong a word, but there are a lot more kind of prominent primary care podcasters out there than there maybe
Mhm.
were sort of 12, 18 months ago. So I think that's, yeah, I think it's really positive. And actually, a lot of the bigger platforms like MB Medical and Red Whale and things have really got much better online offers now. Although they were doing quite well actually before, but they've got regular podcasts and you can access all of their content and courses online. So
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right.
And
So
I think
drum roll. Oh,
yeah, I
go
think
on.
it's meant that, yeah, these companies have had to change, but not even the companies, it's the individuals as well. The single people that have kind of gone out there and started creating their own stuff. Loads of people use lockdown to kind of find their inner voice, didn't they? And start sharing stuff. So it's just worked, hasn't it? And yeah, big fan of it. But yeah, kind of drum roll
Number
announcement
one.
kind of stuff. So we're going to try this now. Let's see if this works.
So AccuRx is my number one. Just so the reason it's number one, and again, you're probably going to challenge me on this, Gandhi. Why AccuRx and not
Mm.
Teams? But I think they've just been really innovative. And at the end of the day, we're a podcast and vlog about innovation and new sorts of tech. And I think AccuRx have really been at the tip of the spear of
Mhm.
video consultations, and also then enabling us to use other sorts of media easily whilst we are interacting with our patients. And other sorts of media means pictures, sick notes, documents, advice links from NHS .net. They just really made that easy for us to do
Mhm.
in general practice. I think they were um, from the sign up process to managing other users within your practice if you're the admin, to starting a video call, to sending a text with advice or asking for a photo and getting that into the patient notes. They've just made it really easy to do, and they have been very responsive, communicated well, and innovated rapidly
Mhm.
as a company, more so than anything else on this list for me. So in terms of the product they've delivered and also their behaviors that they've shown around that product, that's the reason why AccuRx is my number one. What do you think?
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
But I think that might give a spoiler to what's coming up next, to a degree, but I'll
Well,
give you my little, thingy, and then I think we'll chat a bit more about it, shall we? So here's the
so
applause.
yeah, a little bit more there, not just AccuRx.
So, as I said, I don't disagree at all with what you said, Andy. I think Accurx have massively stepped up to the plate and, in a sense, helped out general practice at a time where if it didn't have that, it'd be really scary to think about what would have happened potentially. They gave us some tools that allowed us to deliver care really quickly and effectively, and the speed at which they innovated that is just absolutely astounding. The reason why I haven't put them individually is because I wanted to actually give a shout out to all the primary tech companies because I think they've all done amazing work, and Accurx definitely, in my view, have probably been the leader of that. But also, I think there's been other people who've done some amazing stuff around that as well. So people like Primary Care IT, Redmore Health in terms of educating people about how to use a lot of these tech things in terms of video consultations, online consultation, care homework. They've done some amazing work, particularly the latter end of the year. So if you'd asked me this back in summer, no question asked, Accurix all the way. There's not even a contender. But now that it's got a little bit further down the line, I think these other, teams and stuff, they've just really picked up the pace and what they've been doing to help primary care as a whole. Primary care, these innovative primary care tech companies, and I'm sure there's more, but these were the three that came to my mind as the big kind of, you know, they nailed it. Absolutely nailed it to me. And without them, I cannot imagine where we would be right now in terms of what we're doing in general practice.
Hmm. I'm gonna make a reflection on your choice, and that is,
Okay.
I think what it highlights is the importance of having an industry or an ecosystem. So by that I mean, we don't just have one tech company, or we don't just have just System One and EMIS.
Mhm.
I think it's really important that we have a whole host of companies which innovate and compete with one another. And I think that that's really, really helpful for progress. So I think it's great that that is developing in the UK. Actually, I think we've got some great companies out there, and it was really interesting when we did our digital primary care conference to see those companies together and how they are competing with one another to offer something that is slightly different, how they're trying to differentiate from one another, and really sort of nipping at each other's heels and nipping at the heels of the bigger players like EMIS and System One. I think System One have probably innovated more rapidly because of the activities of AccuRx and some of the other providers as well. And that is only good for us as GPs, both in terms of the availability of function, but also perhaps the price pressure that they put on each other, as the people who often need to make purchasing decisions around these products, but also in terms of the offer that gets through to the patient in terms of the quality of care that they receive, in terms of the better tools that are available for their GPs and practice nurses and primary care staff to deliver care to them. So yeah, it's fantastic that we are seeing this innovation in the industry and growth in the industry. Great.
Absolutely agree with you on every single point that you said there, Andy, because I think it's just been great to see, really supportive, and like I said, I just cannot imagine where we'd have been if they hadn't been there. Interesting and scary to me.
So 2 quick honourable mentions, I
Oh
think we
yeah, let's
have.
go back to it. Yeah, so we've got our honourable mentions. Do you want to bring them on, Andy?
Oh, who's that chap? So Gandhi, I'm going to give an honourable mention to you because I'm always immensely impressed with your work ethic, and you've really stepped up your game this year. If you look at the amount of content on eGPlearning that has been created by yourself to help all of us in primary care to respond to the COVID challenges and to use the new technologies, which we've mentioned loads already in this episode, to use them more effectively. I think you've done a really good service to primary care. And I just wanted to give you a mention and say thank you on behalf of primary care, because I think you've done a really good job. So there you go. Do you disagree with my pick, or is it okay?
I'm all embarrassed now. I hate it when people do this. I absolutely hate being complimented because I always think, well, I'm just doing what I'm doing. But thank you, Andy. Absolutely, thank you. And,
take the compliment.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to stop talking about that then.
Good.
Well, it might be really bad about mine then, because it might,
So who we got? Who or what have we got for Gandhi's honourable mention? So StreamYard. What we're using right now.
Yeah. So I'll be quite clear on this one. A lot of people watching this are probably going to think, what on earth is he talking about? And this is a tool I've been using pretty much this year, and it has significantly improved the workflow things that I've been doing over the past year or so, particularly like Andy mentioned. So we're recording this podcast and this YouTube episode through StreamYard. I've done almost every live stream that we have had since I think about May is when I signed up for it and things. And it's just made the process so much easier. It's meant I've been able to get people on really quickly. It meant we can do this remotely so much easier. I mean, we were using things like OBS before, which was good and has so much more control. I think we found it a bit challenging at times because, for example, I couldn't use OBS properly from my laptop, so we had to always use Andy's things. Whereas it's just easier and it's quick, and it means we can just log on, get things done, and it looks a lot nicer.
It's easier for content creation focused people like ourselves, really, isn't it? We're not all that technically minded. It just makes it so much easier to put out great content.
Yeah, and that's why it's made a massive difference to me personally, which is why I put it as an honourable mention rather than my top 5 of primary care, because I can completely understand very few people are going to need something like this. But if you're live streaming, absolutely my favourite tool, no questions.
Fantastic. So let's.
Wow,
we're really chewing the fat today, Gandhi. This is running longer than I expected.
I know.
But we've got special awards.
Oh, you missed the O there, Andy. 202.
Oh, yeah, we're not in 202. The biggest innovation is the kite shield. Or no, that's completely off. But right. Okay, so innovation. Shall I? So I think I forgot which order they're in actually. Whose pick is when? So
I'm going to give the drum roll thingy.
Oh, and hang on.
I know we're doing it now. Yeah.
So the winner of the golden pineapple.
So that was Disruptor.
This is the Disruptor. So we have the Tankard. These are the awards from last year. We've got the winner of the Tankard for innovation 2020 is, this is my pick, AccuRx. We've already talked about why we like AccuRx, so we perhaps don't need to talk in too much detail, but only to focus on their type behaviors and their delivery on innovation. And by that, I mean, they were adaptive, they moved quickly, and they probably dragged other people forwards with them. I think they were, as I said, the tip of the spear. That's why they're there. That's why they're my Innovation 2020 award winner.
Absolutely. And I think we covered this in our, kind of episodes around about that time. The fact that they churned out video consultations as a platform for primary care within a weekend. I mean, if that's not innovation, I don't know what is.
Yeah, and in a new way that I hadn't really thought of doing.
Text messaging.
Yeah. Oh, who'd have thought?
Yeah.
So, right, Gandhi, who have you picked?
What's going on there we go. Us, primary care. So I think primary care has innovated unbelievably in the past year, and we've had to. Let's be clear, COVID came along and just did crazy stuff. But the response across the board in terms of how general practice has responded, not just in terms of GPs, but our nursing staff, our allied healthcares, our reception teams, everyone has just innovated locally in terms of what they're trying to do to deliver healthcare for our population under the biggest change we've ever had to deal with in a worldscape and stuff. And as a result of that, I think a nod has to be given to primary care as a whole, and how we've responded and stuff. So I appreciate it's probably a little bit more of a woolly one compared to a specific name, but I just felt, you know what, hats off to us all. We've done something amazing this past year, and I know that there are definitely people out there that will say we haven't and call otherwise, but you know what, tough. We've done a great job this year, and I think we'll continue to learn from the challenges, the mistakes, but move forward in terms of delivering better healthcare to all of us, hopefully.
I absolutely agree with you. I will not disagree with that at all. And so the final awards is the golden pineapple, or the holy hand grenade, I think we thought it looked like last time. So what have been
so last year we gave this to PCNs, didn't we, Andy?
I think so. I think PCNs and probably Babylon were an honourable mention.
Yeah.
But those guys don't talk about them all that much anymore. But there we go. Maybe they'll pop up in 2021.
So I'm going to count you down for this one because we've got a little dun dun dun, haven't we?
Okay, go on. Give me the dun dun duns.
3, 2, 1.
Oh, this was your pick, Gandhi.
Okay.
What's that? I've never seen that before.
So that is COVID-19. Simply put.
I've seen a lot of it.
Yeah. But yeah, for me personally, and I think for pretty much most people across the world, COVID-19 has been the absolute biggest disruptor. I mean, if you've listened to us at any point over the past year, you've heard me say it. I think COVID-19 has been the biggest disruptor ever. And it's just changed everything, hasn't it? How we do things, what we do, how we, enough said.
Yeah, it's accelerated change, hasn't it? I think we probably, in terms of our adoption of technology, it's been accelerated forwards by multiple years, I think we would say. So, and that's sort of what disruption's about. It's really shook up how we work and made us think about doing things in different ways. So an award for COVID-19. There we go. Who'd have thought it?
Mm-hmm. And as you say, Andy, I know often people think about disruption as a negative thing. And don't get me wrong, COVID has had more than its fair share of negative stuff it's done to us. There have been some positives, like I said, the right shift in the population, the way we're trying to deliver things more effectively. We've seen some real positive stuff, even the opportunity for us to appreciate and spend more time with our loved ones because of COVID-19, but don't get me wrong, it's had some bad points.
Yeah, of course. Good. And what did I pick? Let's see. So, Zoom. Okay. Now, the reason, there's often a bittersweet element to what we pick as a disruptor. And I was reflecting, and I think Zoom and Teams, to a certain extent, it's probably had the biggest impact on my working life, I think. And who'd have thought that, I could, in what would be a normal day, so where if someone was inviting me to a meeting last year, they said, "Oh, you're on call on a Monday, Dr. Foster, but will you come to a meeting at 12 until 1 p.m., about X, Y, or Z? Oh, and then we need you to be present at this emergency meeting at 1 till 2 as well, and maybe 2 till 3. Can you make these meetings?" I said, "Well, I'm on call really. I'd have to drive across the city to get to those meetings. I can't do it. But now I find I'm attending these meetings, and obviously, I suppose the system is being more adaptive and moving more quickly. But gosh, has it disrupted my working life? I did a video on the darker side of video meetings, and we'll link to it in the show notes, and maybe take a look, because I looked at some of these ways in which video meetings have disrupted our lives in negative ways. They've also had some interesting effects on our relationships with one another when we can't or choose not to travel to meet each other and see each other directly. So I think it's had a big change, and it will continue to have a big change on the way we work going forwards. I think Pandora's box is open, and we won't be able to put video meetings back in. So let's see what happens going forwards.
Again, I don't disagree with you at all there. I think, the way that, video conferencing meetings, Zoom meetings, all that kind of stuff has changed our lives. Absolutely. Both me and you in particular, with our PCN jobs and trying to maintain practice and all that other kind of stuff. And doing this, doing our podcasting, it's impacted it there. But yeah, don't deny it. I'd still eke COVID-19 as the trigger for it, but yeah, absolutely.
Good. So, and the final thing is, blank screen, but it's not on our screen anyway. So predictions for next year. So I suppose we can do these fairly quickly. I'm going to give you my prediction for 2021, Gandhi. So it's not a positive one. I had a negative prediction last year as well. So I'm going to predict shortages. So I think we will see a number of stories emerging around shortages of various things. And I think we will be short of new staff to recruit the ARS roles. We'll be finding that we are not able to allocate and spend the funds for these roles. We may have seen some of this already, but I think we'll struggle to recruit physicians associates and paramedics and so forth into primary care, and there'll be some stories around that. And I think we might even see some drug shortages. We've seen some already. I think there'll continue to be knock-on effects from COVID-19 to global supply chains. And there's that thing that somehow we've not talked very much about this year, when perhaps we should have been spending more time talking about it, that thing called Brexit. Will or may have an impact on the availability of various things. So I think we might see more about shortages.
That's an interesting one, I must admit, Andy. And I think, like you say, shortages are, something we've always struggled with when it comes to particularly medication shortages, drug shortages in primary care, because it's an absolute nightmare to deal with. But you're right, Brexit brings the unfortunate reality that this is going to be our reality for next year, in terms of we don't even know what's happening with trade agreements and that kind of stuff at this point in time when we're recording it. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where that lands us and how how much of an impact that's going to have with us.
So Gandhi, you must have a really positive prediction for us then, as your prediction for 2021. Go on, hit us with it.
So everybody probably heard Andy's and thought doom and gloom. I'm going to be even more doom and gloom, I'm afraid. I think we're going to see the end of general practice, to be honest.
Explain to me, Gandhi, how does that come to be by the end of 2021?
So primary care, and in particular, like you mentioned, supply shortage, all the other kind of stuff, I think we are going to start to see the public not as happy with the NHS as they have been. It's undergone a massive change, massive shift. Brexit on top of COVID, I think we're going to see many people feel that, I don't know, maybe it's just a negative experience over the past couple of weeks I've been having in terms of patient contacts and that kind of stuff. Maybe I am all doom and gloom, but I get the impression that the public doesn't feel as happy about the NHS as it used to. Gone are the days where they were clapping for us. It just seems a different world, and I wonder if actually we're going to see a different thing come out from the NHS, and maybe we will finally get that debate about the fact that the NHS is nowhere near funded to do the work that it should be doing, and the recognition. I mean, we've seen that with Public Health England; they're not funded anywhere near what they should have been to cope with a global pandemic, and we saw that a lot of the problems we had.
Yeah, and then they get thrown under the bus.
Absolutely. How much more is the healthcare service going to take before it finally breaks? I mean, I know many people are probably out there think it's already broken, but the marathon is feeling very uphill right now at times, and I think we are going to see potentially the rise of private care, because that may be what people are looking towards. I hope not. I genuinely don't hope that that's what happens, but it's just hard sometimes to see the slightly more positive side at times, but we'll see. Doom and gloom, Andy.
It's Christmas. Merry Christmas, everyone,
Yeah.
and a Happy New Year.
Right.
Okay. On that note, no, you know what? I don't think it's going to happen. I think the public love the NHS,
Mm,
and like any relationship, there's ups and downs, and there's a lot of logic to the way we do things in this country, and it's efficient and it makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to be positive about the future. Right, but that brings us to the end of
it
this
does.
episode.
Yep.
So we're taking a break over Christmas.
Yep.
So that means on Christmas Day, we won't be putting out a podcast or a
Mhm.
recorded episode, because we think that people might have other things to do on Christmas Day,
Understood.
but then we'll be resuming after that. So yeah, so Gandhi, what have we got coming up over the Christmas period, and what can we expect?
So on the 2nd of January, so after the new year, instead of a live episode, which is what we normally do, you're going to have us and me and Andy with our recorded episode with Ben Gowland from the General Practice podcast as we review 2020 from a prospect of a joint collaboration. And actually, we're going to have a bit more hope in there. So rather than giving our predictions for 2021, we'll be giving you our hopes for 2021. So all that doom and gloom you just heard from me, you're going to find out the more positive side of it in that episode. So
Oh, I can't wait. I
yeah.
will. I will tune in to find out. So great. So I suppose that brings us to an end, really. So so Merry Christmas. Enjoy. Hopefully you get some time away.
Mhm.
Hopefully nobody will be delivering COVID vaccination jabs on Christmas Day. Let's hope. Fingers crossed. And you can all hopefully have some time with friends and family over Christmas in whatever responsible way we are allowed to do so. So yeah. So Merry Christmas
Yeah.
from me.
Merry Christmas from me and a Happy New Year to you all. And we will catch you in the next episode.
Cool.